as all of us know from prior experience, these ideas need to be implemented ultimately at the regional and local level. That's really where action takes place on the ground. Fifth, it will be critical to communicate the plan widely and smartly. Sixth, the plan will need to be highly complementary with national development strategies. It should not contradict, replicate, or overlap with them. Seventh, the plan will need to identify realistic initiatives and targets and take into consideration the bureaucratic and administrative capacity of various bodies, ASEAN and other, in order to implement them. Eight, we should design something that is flexible. We are in a dynamically changing environment, and so the plan will no doubt need to be updated as we move along. And then finally, it will be absolutely critical to mobilize resources from all actors, governments, private sector, development partners, to implement the plan. This will require smart solutions to generate domestic resources. It will require the reallocation of resources to new priorities, and it may require the promotion of contributions from various elements of society, as well as, of course, the participation and contribution of multilateral partners. With that, let me conclude, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, and indeed the ADB, the opportunity to join this forum and to join this very, very talented and interesting group of speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, for your very comprehensive presentation, and also for highlighting the importance of sectoral adjustment in this recovery process, which I think is very, very critical, since, as we all know, a number of sectors are adversely affected by this pandemic. We're also looking at those sectoral policies in our framework. So I think your presentation provides a very nice contribution to what we're doing at ASEC. I think, as we all know, one important issue when we talk about recovery right now is the issue of sustainability. I think we all recognize that this recovery is not about only the pandemic, but it is also about how we can position the region moving forward. That's why I'm very glad that we have Ibu Armida, who is our next speaker, to talk about the issue of ensuring a place for sustainability in the post-pandemic world, to highlight how sustainability considerations could come into play, okay, in the overall framework of our recovery efforts. So, Ibu Armida, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Pa Aladdin. Very good morning from Bangkok. It is indeed my pleasure to be here to participate at the virtual high-level dialogue on ASEAN post-pandemic recovery. I would like to thank SG Dato' Lim, Pa Aladdin, and also very pleased, very glad to be in the same panel as my colleague Ibu Mari, as well as Ahmed and other speakers. May I take the opportunity to take you to 3 major points in my presentation. The slide, please. Which are SDG progress in ASEAN. Just to take you a little back, yeah, and see how ASEAN position in terms of SDG progress. Second is UN Secretary General's policy brief on Southeast Asia, which we just launched last night, yeah. So I would like to take all of you just quickly at the major points, the main points of SG policy brief on Southeast Asia, and third is building back better in ASEAN. Next slide on SDG progress in ASEAN. The following chart shows, if you could click it to see the full view of the slide to show the progress. Again, data is for SDG progress ASEAN before COVID-19. The line 2019, it shows line in 2019, shows if an indicator achieves up to that line based on 2019 data, then the particular indicator is on track or making good progress. Yellow, meaning that that particular indicator needs acceleration or slow progress. Red, going in reverse. Yeah. So the overall picture for ASEAN countries are good progress for SDG 4, 6, 7, 9, which basically quality education, clean water, sanitation, energy, and industry innovation infrastructure. And reverse the red line there for inequality, peace, justice, and strong institution. And the rest of the indicators are basically slow progress and even in some cases stagnant. Next slide, just for your information, yeah, if you would like also to know the details, yeah, the more detailed in terms of variables and so on, which ones are on track, which one are making good progress, which one in reverse. So this is the picture, yeah. And we can expect, again, before COVID-19, yeah, which one, if business as usual, the SDG targets that will be met by 2030, which one is not on track. And the next slide shows the dashboard on preparedness of Southeast Asian member states for COVID-19, several indicators related to human development, health system, and connectivity. Yeah? So we added the connectivity because we understand now the very strategic nature, very important nature of digital connectivity. Yeah, again, looking at these slides or this picture, that again, countries in Southeast Asia, again, this picture is not only ASEAN, this one is, we extract from SD policy brief, which for Southeast Asia, they are in different stages. Several countries, let's say the first 4 up there are quite, in terms of preparedness, in all categories are there, yeah, but other countries, several are quite lagging behind and several somewhat in the middle there. But all in all countries, in terms of the health expenditure per GDP is at the low end. Yeah, all countries. Yeah, I think across the board, they are at the low end. And this more or less, yeah, shows the preparedness of the countries when they are faced in this kind of crisis, especially this health pandemic. And the next slide shows the current or ongoing ASEAN-UN complementarities initiative, which focuses on 6 core areas or 5 substantive core areas: poverty eradication, infrastructure connectivity, sustainable management of natural resources, sustainable consumption production, and resilience, which more or less then we can align quite nicely with the SDG, which can be shown at the next slide. And how yeah, it has been progressing so far, again, pre-COVID 2019. Yeah, the one that is more or less good progress, infrastructure connectivity, slow progress, but progress is there on poverty eradication, sustainable management of natural resources, but the one regressing, sustainable consumption production, and resilience. Resilience also shows, yeah, the impact of climate change, the disaster, and so on. So it's regressing, yeah, not even stagnating. Again, if you map this out, yeah, with the project initiative that we are doing, again, we can map that out. That bearing in mind that this is not only SCAP or UN, yeah. Next slide, please. But we are also working together with other multilateral partners. We had this meeting a few weeks ago, last month, yeah, in which World Bank also joined, EU and many other multilateral partners joined forces in this complementarity cooperation with ASEAN. Second, next slide, please. The second topic is on UN Secretary General Policy Brief, which was launched last night, actually, yeah, so very, very recent, which focuses on the recovering better, the build back better, yeah. But then again, within the context, actually, Sendai framework, as you know, preparedness, immediate response, recovery, or build back, yeah. So this SD policy brief actually focuses on the third third part, which is the recovery or the build back better. Again, considering the impact and so on, which previous speaker already quite presented in quite comprehensive manner. So I'm not going to repeat that. So in the SD policy brief, 4 recommendation, major recommendation. Of course, there are details there. First is tackling inequality. Second, bridging the digital divide. Third, ensuring a green recovery. Fourth, upholding human rights and good governance practices. Yeah, on tackling inequality, of course, challenges as well as opportunities, which shows also the priority going forward, in which social protection, I think, align with universal healthcare system. Yeah, the social protection, again, looking at the data for Asia Pacific, not only Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific as a whole, 60% of population Asia Pacific is not covered with any form of social protection. Yeah. So this is the opportunity to scale up, increase social protection, anchored in domestic resources, but also at the same time align with the strengthened universal healthcare system. Supporting micro and SMEs with a focus on women-led enterprises. Second, next slide, please. The bridging digital divide. Again, the challenges, opportunities. We see this as an opportunity also to accelerate investment in ICT infrastructure. Everybody already said that, yeah. But at the same time, creating the legal regulatory basis for the digital economy, which again, this governance, the strong institution part, enabling digitized public services to citizens and businesses. The e-government part, yeah, which is also very, very important. And on that note, I would like also to add that the importance of how to strengthen the user side. Access, of course, very important, but the user's end side. Availability, accessibility important, but then again, how for the users, yeah, to access in an affordable manner, you know, the mobile computer devices, including the change in mindset behavior. So it needs the transformation, yeah, not only the physical infrastructure access and so on, but needs the transformation, the change in mindset and behavior. So this needs to be built in a more systematic and structured manner. Third, ensuring a green recovery. Next slide, please. Challenges and opportunities, again, accelerating transition away from fossil fuels, especially the subsidy, towards low carbon economy, as well as technology supported by the appropriate technology, of course. Supporting climate change mitigation efforts, and I think this should be a very high priority. And again, looking at the data, earlier data, even before COVID-19, yeah, this is one of the weakest point. You know, the SDG indicators within the ASEAN context, this is one of the weakest point, weakest link. Therefore, we need to put high priority on supporting the climate change mitigation as well as adaptation efforts, enhancing opportunities at the same time for job creation and environmental co-benefits. And next slide, please. The third part of the presentation is the building back better in ASEAN. Again, within the overall UN framework, us in SCAP, we complement the socio-economic framework of UN by focusing on certain areas. Again, the leave no one behind, the poverty inequality, the fiscal monetary stimulus packages and direction, and the sustainability cross-border connectivity. Yes, so this is one area that needs also to be strengthened, which I will touch on a little bit later. Yeah, what does it mean by sustainability of cross-border connectivity? The more integrated connectivity, 4 types of connectivity, cross-border connectivity. Fifth is all this decarbonization, energy, and then climate change mitigation, adaptation, and preparedness for future pandemics and crises. Next slide, please, on sustainable connectivity. So actually 4 types or 4 pillars of connectivity, the cross-border trade. One is two types of these are trade and transport. They have to go together. And then digital connectivity as well as energy connectivity. The slide shown here, so basically how we chart forward, yeah, in a more sustainable connectivity based on the 3 elements: resilient, digitalize, and decarbonize. The 4 types, yeah. What I would like to stress here is the 4 types of trade, transport, digital, energy, within the 3 pillars of sustainability, of resilience, digitalize, and decarbonize. So the connectivity should be, for example, the connectivity infrastructure, yeah, or transport and so on, should be multimodal. And then need to also focus on the operational connectivity efficiency, yeah? Trade facilitation for trade. And then digitalization, digitalize, smart infrastructure, many examples already ongoing, including, for example, smart port and the like. In terms of trade facilitation, paperless trade, contactless trade, intelligent transport, logistic. Decarbonization, again,
2 minutes left.
The potential of rail transport, rail connectivity, yeah, waterborne transport, energy, and then in terms of energy, need to also focus on energy efficiency, renewable energy, and within the context of NDC, yeah, this climate change commitment of countries. Next slide, the 2 final slides. Again, I would like also to draw your attention on this climate change impact, yeah, disaster and so on, climate change mitigation, resilience. Again, if you look at the data, this is one of, again, weak points of ASEAN member states, yeah. And if you see the onset of certain risks, yeah, for example, you know, drought and so on, more prolonged, with a huge impact, yeah, on the economy, then we need to put priority of this in building back better. Last slide again, how to put this, yeah, all the ASEAN comprehensive recovery framework. Partners such as us, yeah, multilateral partners, we will align, yeah, our support to ASEAN within the context of your plan. So again, this picture is the upcoming, yeah, the renewal or upcoming. Sorry, the previous slide, please. Yeah, the ASEAN-UN Plan of Action for 2021-2025, which we are in the finalization stage now. Thank you very much again for this opportunity. Over to you, Pak Aladin.
Okay, thank you so much, Ibu Armida, for a very comprehensive presentation. Also very interesting to see that there is a lot of complementarities between the UN system and ASEAN. And currently, I think one of the issues is on ensuring a green recovery that Ibu Armida has mentioned. And I've already seen a number of questions on that issue. Maybe we can discuss that later on during the Q&A. So let me now go to our last speaker for this session, Mr. Juk Lee, to talk about the role of the private sector in the post-pandemic recovery. Juk, please.
Hello, good morning to everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Juok Lee. I'm the head of regional agenda for the Asia Pacific here at the World Economic Forum. It's great to share the same virtual panel with friends and close partners in the region. Ibu Mari and Ibu Armida, is also great to see you again. But I was also watching the chat box with participants posting their messages from where they are dialing in. It's very heartening to see that there is tremendous interest on this topic. And I hope that wherever you are, that you are keeping safe and healthy. It's both a great privilege for me as well as a huge responsibility to talk about the role of private sector in the post-pandemic recovery plan for ASEAN. And I want to remind all of us, and some of my previous panelists have also touched on the importance of the role of private sector, but I want to also turn your attention towards the commitments and the emphasis that ASEAN and ASEAN Plus 3 leaders have made towards the beginning of the pandemic for the critical importance of a coherent, multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder, and whole of ASEAN community approach in responding to this crisis. And I want to emphasize that it should act as a key guiding principle for all of us in these efforts. I want to also thank the ASEAN Secretary General, Dato' Lim Jock Hoi, and also the entire Secretariat for its tireless efforts in bringing us closely to work together throughout this crisis, and also for allowing this opportunity to contribute our ideas and sharing our views. Before going into the issue of what can and should be done by private sector, I want to turn our attention to some of the positive examples from the forum's perspective, from a global perspective, what has been good examples, and also given that Dr. Kung, the chairperson of ASEAN BAC, will also share some of the examples from the region. I hope that the great collaborations between sectors here in ASEAN can also act as great examples leading the way going forward. With that, I'd just like to share a couple of slides to support my presentation. So there have been a few silver linings since the COVID-19 pandemic, one of which has been that we have found renewed momentum and also modality for public-private collaboration. As many of you are aware, the World Economic Forum, throughout its 50 years of existence, has been working and advocating for closer collaboration between sectors. Also on the topic of health and health security, even before the pandemic, seeing the launches of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, the Global Fund, and also CEPI in Davos, just to name a few as results. And with the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, the forum launched the COVID Action Platform to coordinate action by business combined with global and multi-stakeholder cooperation, with the three stated objectives: to galvanize the global business community for collective action, to protect people's livelihood and facilitate business continuity, and also mobilize cooperation and business support for COVID-19 response. And within days of launching the platform, the forum attracted more than 1,800 executives from 1,200 organizations from all regions joining forces. And we feel that it has been a sign of commitment as well as readiness for the private sector to join this fight against the pandemic. I want to highlight a few examples in detail, but there have also been many more, such as the donation of soaps and sanitizers by Unilever, amounting to more than 100 million euros. Initially for soaps, I think it was the best line of defense until we have an effective vaccine developed. But here, the three examples I wanted to highlight are focusing on what private sector, as well as with other stakeholders, can actually do to respond more effectively. The first one I wanted to highlight was the Workplace Commons initiative, which was launched in partnership with Arizona State University. It is an initiative to collect, refine, and share best practices for returning to the workplace safely. Because as all of us know, one of the first responsibilities for companies is towards its employees and ensuring that their safety are put at the center of the response efforts. And we have together developed a visual interactive dashboard, which is hosted on the Arizona State University website. And it collates more than 250 cases in enabling companies to actually trace the latest trends in terms of contact tracing, as well as different quarantine measures across different industry sizes and geographies. The second example I wanted to highlight was on the importance of supply chains, and more specifically towards the food system security. Some of the previous speakers have alluded to the importance of safeguarding food security throughout the crisis, also not to replicate some of the previous difficulties the region has experienced. But here, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development has led the efforts together with private sector to respond and also to follow up with some of the critical challenges that businesses have been facing in this field, and to mitigate and build a more resilient supply chain systems in the food system. The last example I wanted to share was on harnessing the innovation from smaller and more innovative players. The previous two examples, I think, highlighted more of the involvements from the larger corporations, which typically comprise the membership of the World Economic Forum. But the last example, I think, also is very important given now what we're seeing with the advent of the fourth industrial revolution, and also the innovative capacity, the capacity of disruptors to also contribute towards creating tangible solutions. We've partnered with the World Health Organization, 500 startups, Top Tier Impact, Chemka Foundation, and Webit to launch a series of COVID-19 related challenges on our new virtual platform Uplink. And the aim is to crowdsource, surface, and scale high potential solutions. We will select, I think, 15 of the most successful and the most promising innovations, and also help them towards a track where we can link these ideas together with partners, investors, media, as well as curating a program for their successful scaling up. Turning our attention back to the region, as the pandemic has further surfaced some of the fault lines that exist in our society, we feel that it's also revealed some of the more deeper rooted vulnerabilities within the ASEAN region. And we strongly believe that the only way to effectively respond and to rebuild is to engage all of the different stakeholders, not just for the response, but also in the initial stages of designing the solutions. That brings me to the other silver lining that we feel exists within this COVID-19 crisis, which is the modality of how we work together with different sectors. And from the forum side, I think we've experienced even before the crisis that it's become less of an uphill battle to advocate for the need for multi-stakeholder collaboration. But what we're seeing also is, in terms of the how, that there have been more willingness from governments and also from international organizations to involve private sector and other stakeholders from the design phase. I think what we've seen in the past was governments would actually more or less set the agenda, and also in some cases a defined solution, and invite other stakeholders to chime in when only there is a clear gap in terms of the capacity to deliver. And I think it is very promising to see this outreach, especially when the role of government is arguably more important than ever before, with the huge stimulus plans that governments are introducing, but still, I think, recognizing the fact that private sector has a very strong role to play. So that, seeing that demand is the reason why the forum has also, in addition to a number of industry communities that were primarily led by CEOs, decided to convene regional action groups across different regions to facilitate multi-stakeholder exchange. The one focusing on our region, then convening immediately after the ASEAN and ASEAN Plus 3 leaders met for the special virtual summit on COVID-19 in mid-April, and have so far identified concrete areas where joint collaboration can really have an impact, one of which is on resilient supply chains in ASEAN. And we've in fact just concluded a first meeting of the task force dedicated to this workstream, led by the Asian Development Bank. The other one is on the ASEAN Green Deal, and we are hoping that, as Ibu Armida also alluded to in the previous presentation, to really use this crisis also as an opportunity for the region to build back better, and also to inspire that we enhance our creativity and also competitiveness throughout this experience. So we will actually put together a set of concrete proposals through this regional action group and through its work streams, and hopefully we have these proposals making it in time for input towards the post-pandemic recovery plan for ASEAN, and also before the leaders meet again in November. And if not for ensuring inclusivity, the other reason why we feel that private sector should be more closely involved in policy design for recovery is to fully seize the opportunity that this crisis offers, to reposition where the region sits in global value chains, and to ensure that any substantial efforts made in recovery is also invested in a way that increases its collective competitiveness and potential synergies as a regional bloc. And we feel that this is also very much in line with the vision set out for the ASEAN community for 2025. And this brings me to my last point, which is on the Great Reset. And we mentioned, I think, earlier in the presentation that one of the silver linings for this pandemic has been that it has re-emphasized the need for all of us to work together. And I think given this strong momentum, it would also be indeed amiss for us if all of us working together meant that we were all working together to go back to where we were. The forum launched the Great Reset initiative in early June to help leaders navigate and shape
2
this
minutes left.
transformation. The Great Reset was set as the theme for the next annual meeting in Davos, and the discussions around the 10 key dimensions planned between now and next January will offer unique opportunities to shape the priorities, policies, and partnerships which are needed to weather the crisis and reset economies and societies. And as was voiced on one of our Great Reset dialogues, normal was not working. And I think the pandemic only made this more obvious. So whether it's the climate crisis, which looms just around the corner, the social crisis, which I think with systemic inequalities, adding a huge burden to our systems, we need to take this moment to also fundamentally redesign how ASEAN should look like in the post-COVID world. In the annual meeting this year in Davos in January, which now I think seems like such a long time ago, the forum celebrated its 50th anniversary with the theme of stakeholder capitalism. And I think it was evident that private sector was not only on board with the idea, but also ready in terms of increasing the efficiency for measuring impact, not just for its own shareholders, but across the society towards all of the stakeholders. So I can say that there is certainly a strong willingness for private sector to work together with other stakeholders in making this pandemic an opportunity for us to build back better. And the World Economic Forum will continue to work alongside our partners to offer our multi-stakeholder platforms, including that of the regional action groups, for our global insights and support the ASEAN's collective efforts to build back better in hopes that we bring a stronger, more cohesive region, not only to those negatively impacted by this crisis, but also more importantly towards our future generation. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I look forward to the further discussions with the commentators.
Okay, thank you so much, Hajuk, for your presentation. And that's the end of the key presentations, the section on the key presentations. And now I think we're ready to move on to the next section, which is the comment section. And for this section, we are lucky to have 3 discussants to provide their views on the 4 presentations. So let me just quickly introduce them. Our first discussant is Mr. Nguyen Dung, who is currently the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Vietnam and also currently the chairperson of the ASEAN Coordinating Committee Working Group on Public Health Emergencies. Then the second discussant is Mr. Doan Dui Kong, currently the chairman or the chairperson of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, okay, for this year. And finally, we have Professor Fukunari Kimura, the chief economist of the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. Maybe we can start off with comments from Mr. Dung. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General of ASEAN, Dato Lim Jock Hoi, DSG Aladdin Rilo, and distinguished speakers from the World Bank, ADB, UN ISCAP, and World Economic Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to join the high-level dialogue on ASEAN post-pandemic recovery, and I highly appreciate the ASEAN Secretariat for taking this initiative, for engaging experts from leading international and regional organizations to support this important exercise of ASEAN. The important inputs of this high-level dialogue today shall be most helpful for the ASEAN Secretariat in completing the draft outline and concept of the recovery framework, which the ACC Working Group on Public Health Emergencies is going to discuss next month. I have listened tentatively and learned a lot from all the 4 speakers and found your assessments and suggestions very pertinent. You have provided us with the overall pictures of the current crisis that ASEAN is facing, and you also suggested concrete measures and especially how to coordinate effectively among different sectors, among countries, and the important role of also the important role of private sectors, and not to let the work of recovery affect long-term sustainable development, etc. From your insightful inputs, I wish to draw some main points which I think are very important for the ASEAN Secretariat's reference as they develop the very first outline of the recovery framework. First, the recovery framework, while comprehensive in nature, should also be practical and focus-oriented by identifying those areas, those sectors and people that are most affected by the pandemic, thereby defining appropriate remedies to help address the challenges they face and recover. As I previously shared during our meeting the other day on this topic, we may have certain sectors like tourism, transportation, hospitality, services, manufacturing, etc. The MSMEs and household businesses, people who lost their jobs, especially vulnerable groups that require focused attention and resources from the governments to help alleviate their burdens and gradually recover. Second, I recall the comments by DSG Aladdin Rilo earlier during the meeting of the ACC Working Group, and also mentioned by the panel today, that we may face the contradictions between the need to open up the economies for quick recovery and the requirement to stay cautious in containing the spread of the pandemic. I cannot agree more. This situation is certainly faced in every country. The development of the recovery framework would certainly need to take into due consideration this fact. And third, the recovery process should cover both short-term, medium, and long-term measures, as all the speakers emphasized during their presentations. Those measures aimed at assisting the affected sectors and those vulnerable groups to recover might be in the short and medium range, while those longer term measures might embark on efforts to promote inclusiveness, sustainability, and strengthening the resilience of the ASEAN community in face of future shocks. Fourth, we all agree that the recovery exercise should involve the participation and contribution of various stakeholders in the society, as well as valuable contribution from regional and international organizations. I encourage World Bank, the ADB, UNESCAP, and World Economic Forum to continue working closely with ASEAN in our efforts towards sustainable and comprehensive recovery. I very much look forward to the first revised concept note of the framework to be developed by the ASEAN Secretariat, duly taken the valuable inputs and contributions by recognized experts being with us today. I thank you very much, Mr. Yes.
Thank you so much, Zung, for your very thoughtful comments. Now, can I invite Mr. Doan Kung, our representative from the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, to provide his comments. Kung, please. Okay, seems like Kong is not available. So can we request Professor Kimura to please provide your comments first. Thank you, Kimura-san.
Yeah, thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to participate in this event. I think 4 presentations were excellent, coming from different angles and talk about our immediate issues for ASEAN. I'd like to make 4 points very quickly. The first one, if you see ASEAN countries, the progress of the containment of the disease is quite different across countries. So I think the phasing of policies, particularly health policies and macroeconomic policies, is extremely important. Marie talked about the pillar 1, 2, 3. Ahmed used the wording like short-term, mid-term, medium-term, long-term, but I would say the phase 1, emergency responses, phase 2, exit policy, phase 3, policies for the new normal. So I think this is very important when we talk about health policy and macroeconomic policy. Emergency responses, in the past, some people said that there's some sort of trade-off between health and economy. And I think that's quite wrong. We have to prioritize health first in emergency responses. And if we open up the economy too early, to stimulate the economy, it doesn't really work very well. So